this is so important at this point in time because we're coming to a Japan that is our most important ally. And as I got sworn in by Vice President Vance last week, he looked at the two of us and he said, you have quite a responsibility coming because you're going to go and serve to our most important ally in the most important region in the world at the most important time. And that struck very deeply because I believe that. We understand the ties that exist between the United States and Japan by both being on the same ocean. We realize how it benefits not just the communities and not just the economies, but it's also with the exchange of students and culture, and it's just amazing how it strengthens just the overall community when we have this tie with Japan.
Something big is changing in Asia, quietly but unmistakably. Japan, long seen as a pacifist power, is now rewriting the rules of deterrence without firing a shot. From stealth frigates in Australia to radar systems in the Philippines, Tokyo is building a high-tech web of influence across the Indo-Pacific. But this isn't just about weapons. It's about information, alliances, and silent pressure. Why is Japan rearming? Who stands to gain or lose from its rise as a strategic power?
China and Russia are joining hands, launching one of the world's largest joint military drills. This comes at a time when tensions between the United States and Russia have increased to heights unseen since the Cold War. Beijing and Washington are locked into a fierce trade war.
Japan, long defined by its post-World War II pacifist identity, is entering a new chapter in its security posture. Historically constrained by its constitution from projecting military power, the country now finds itself in a rapidly changing regional environment. Driven by mounting tensions with neighboring powers, China, Russia, and North Korea, Tokyo is pursuing a strategy of strategic reawakening through closer alignment with allies, notably the United States and Australia.
But when you talk about overall security, it's not just that and pushing back against governments in one form or another, but we sit with Japan in a very tough neighborhood. I mean, you have Russia, you have China, you have North Korea. I mean, this is a pretty tough neighborhood to deal with, and so we'll be working very hard on that. But you also have to look at the safety of Americans, American interest, American companies. We have to take into account the safety of Japanese citizens, how we're working together with our military and how we're pushing back, making sure that our military has all the issues taken care of and all the materials that they need to be able to successfully push back against a country like China. And we're certainly right in the middle of that going on between the Japanese government and the U.S. government, but also the economic side of what that means in the predatory lending and other issues and with trade circumventing that the Chinese partake in.
In mid-2025, the arrival of the USS Michael Monsoor, a Zumwalt-class guided missile destroyer, at Yokosuka marked a significant development in regional naval deployment. On 7 July, the ship entered Tokyo Bay en route to Commander Fleet Activities Yokosuka, making its port visit the first by a Zumwalt-class vessel since USS Zumwalt's visit in 2022. The Michael Monsoor is assigned to Destroyer Squadron 15, a major surface force within the U.S. 7th Fleet, typically composed of around 10 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. By positioning this advanced ship within operational reach of Japan's maritime borders, along the contested First Island chain, the U.S. sent a clear signal that it remains an active and capable presence in the Western Pacific, ready to deter and respond to rising Chinese naval maneuvers, including aircraft carrier deployments.
Missiles launch, destroyers slice through the sea, and fighter jets scream across the sky. This isn't war, not yet. But it's what war would look like if China and Russia fought side by side. And now they're practicing exactly that. Submarines and aircraft from both countries gathered for massive joint military drills in the Sea of Japan, a region bristling with geopolitical tension.
Though not yet physically armed with hypersonic weapons, The USS Michael Monsoor's appearance near Japan carries substantial symbolic weight. The ship's stealthy, tumble-home hull design affords a low radar cross-section, making it distinctive among U.S. Navy vessels and reinforcing its status as a next-generation combat platform. Although its original advanced gun system remains non-functional due to the cancellation of the specialized LRLAP ammunition, each round estimated to cost between $800,000 and $1 million, the destroyer is undergoing conversion to host hypersonic missiles under the conventional prompt strike program. Japan's decision to host U.S. destroyers, such as the Michael Monsoor, reflects a clear statement of intent. Former policy barriers are giving way to new practical cooperation, hosting Allied ships, sharing basing rights, and integrating Japanese and U.S. maritime strategies. This marks a shift from Japan's traditional stance as an observer to a more active partner in regional deterrence. Alongside the naval footprint, Japan has moved forward with its own hypersonic missile program. The Hypervelocity Gliding Projectile, HVGP, is at the heart of Tokyo's indigenous effort to field hypersonic strike capabilities. Designed as a boost glide weapon, the HVGP is capable of delivering anti-ship or land attack payloads at hypersonic speed, well in excess of Mach 5, after separating from its booster and gliding toward its target from altitude. Japan plans to complete development of Block 1 of the HVGP by fiscal year 2025, with deployment beginning in 2026, and further development of longer-range versions into the 2030s, reaching as far as 3,000 kilometers. Crucially, the HVGP program is not purely domestic. Japan has secured approval through the U.S. Defense Security Cooperation Agency to receive support and equipment from the United States to assist in testing and infrastructure for the project. The estimated value of this cooperation is around $318 million. In practical terms, this means that when Japan conducts full-scale testing of its HVGP, it is part of a broader, coordinated effort involving allied systems and intelligence networks. Australia's role in this trilateral framework is similarly growing. The United States and Japan are already cooperating with Australia on satellite and space-based tracking for missile defense. Australian installations, including data links from the Northern Territory, are increasingly tied into regional ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, networks that monitor missile testing and movements across the Indo-Pacific. Facilities such as Pine Gap, jointly operated by the U.S. and Australia near Alice Springs, have long provided early warning and tracking data for missile launches, including those by North Korea, and serve as a critical node in the trilateral surveillance architecture. While not openly publicized, Japan's missile radar networks are reportedly being aligned with U.S. systems. Operational integration, such as linking Japanese radars with U.S. SPY-6 systems or connecting decision and targeting data between Pearl Harbor and Yokosuka, is part of this new alignment. These cross-linked systems allow target identification and tracking to flow seamlessly across borders, improving collective responsiveness. Satellite feeds from Australia and intelligence inputs from Guam now feed into Japan's developing missile and command infrastructure. This emerging web of cooperation has three defining characteristics. First, Japan is stepping beyond its historical self-defense posture by providing basing access and hosting allied forces. Second, Tokyo is actively engaging in the development and deployment of advanced weaponry, such as hypersonic missiles, with parallel systems being tested or planned. Third, the three countries are establishing integrated intelligence and surveillance networks that span land, sea, air, and space domains. Taken together, these shifts signal that deterrence in the region is now a shared enterprise. The deployment of the USS Michael Monsoor to Yokosuka and Japan's advancing missile program are practical elements of a broader narrative that Tokyo is no longer a passive beneficiary of security guarantees, but an assertive and operational partner in regional stability. In the coming months, further steps are expected. Continued testing of HVGP systems under U.S. oversight, deepening of satellite and radar sharing, and the presence of U.S. naval assets in Japanese ports are all milestones pointing toward a more robust alliance-based defense posture. Japan's transformation is not immediate turbulence, but deliberate, a calculated redefinition of deterrence built on presence, technology, and multilateral integration. Japan's defense posture over the past year has evolved dramatically as it moves beyond traditional deterrence approaches and embraces technological integration with close allies. Much of this shift centers around advanced weapons systems and data networks linking Tokyo with Washington and Canberra. At the core of this transformation lies the development and deployment of hypersonic missiles and electromagnetic railguns, framed within a broader architecture of real-time intelligence sharing and joint decision-making. Japan's indigenous missile program, known as the Hypervelocity Gliding Projectile, or HVGP, has taken on growing importance. The HVGP is a boost-glide weapon capable of traveling at speeds above Mach 5, launched from solid rocket boosters, and designed to glide unpowered toward its target. Block 1 of the HVGP is meant to be a shorter-range standoff weapon, approximately 300 to 600 kilometers range, with anti-ship and land attack capabilities, while Block 2 plans to extend that range into the 2,000-3,000 kilometer zone, incorporating Wave Rider aerodynamic design for improved efficiency and maneuverability lib. Crucially, HVGP development is being carried out in partnership with the United States. Through the U.S. Defense Security Cooperation Agency, Japan secured U.S. support in testing infrastructure and technical assistance. Initial development funding began in fiscal year 2025, with major launch testing planned soon and deployment envisaged by 2026. Beyond that, the joint program aims toward integration of glide phase interceptors to counter adversary hypersonic threats, a project expected to cost over $3 billion, of which Japan has committed approximately $1 billion, and is to spearhead aerodynamics and separation-capable upper components in the interceptor system. Deployment will run sometime in the early to mid-2030s, WW 24-15 months ago timeframe. While HVGP continues development, Japan has also turned to railgun technology as a potentially lower-cost, high-volume counter to soaring missile costs. In April 2025, the Maritime Self-Defense Force released images showing the prototype turreted electromagnetic railgun installed on their test ship, USS Asuka, with the cover shroud removed, signaling active installation work ahead of sea trials. By late June or early July, observers captured the railgun visibly mounted on Asuka in Yokosuka port. The 6,200-ton vessel is testing what is arguably Japan's boldest leap in naval weapons, an electrically powered cannon capable of firing 40mm projectiles weighing around 320 at Mach 6 to 6.5 speeds, roughly 2,200 millibars, using about 5 megajoules per shot. These rounds are reportedly capable of penetrating heavy armor or intercepting incoming hypersonic threats, suggesting dual utility as both a naval artillery and missile defense tool. Development of Japan's railgun goes back nearly a decade. From 2016 to 2022, the Ministry of Defense's Acquisition, Technology and Logistics Agency, ATLA, conducted rigorous research on electromagnetic acceleration systems at 40mm caliber, working towards stable muzzle velocities of 2,000 millibars and durability of up to 120 rounds without degradation. In October 2023, ATLA announced it had conducted the world's first railgun firing from a maritime platform, a landmark technical milestone. Current live-fire trials aboard USS Asuka represent the next phase in validating the system under operational conditions at sea. Japanese officials confirm ongoing technical cooperation with U.S. counterparts in R&D for railgun technology. While the U.S. Navy abandoned its railgun efforts in 2021, citing insurmountable power and barrel wear issues, Japanese engineers appear to have achieved key breakthroughs. ATLA officials have disclosed information exchange agreements covering technical design and barrel materials with U.S. companies that had previously worked on similar systems. Japan is also engaged with European partners, including France and Germany, in knowledge-sharing agreements across directed energy weapon projects. It is significant that Japan is now progressing where the US had stepped back. The JS Asuka configuration includes modular power generators and energy storage in standard containerized units, providing the 5 megajoule pulses necessary to launch rounds at hypersonic speeds while enabling further miniaturization. The railgun's performance in preliminary trials reportedly met ATLA's durability targets, sustaining controlled fire for dozens of rounds over scores of tests without barrel burnout, offering real promise for eventual operational deployment. But Japan's technology push is not just about better weapons. It is also about cognitive integration. Missile radar and targeting systems are being aligned with US sensors. Japan's SPY-6 equivalent radars, used aboard Aegis-equipped destroyers, are gradually being made interoperable via link systems such as Link 16, enabling real-time data sharing and command coordination with US forces. Reports suggest Japanese early warning data flows both to and from US centers like Pearl Harbor and Guam, as well as to Australian ISR nodes near Alice Springs. This networked approach means that data on a track detected in eastern waters near Okinawa may immediately trigger alerts in multiple command centers. Integrating algorithms based on US CENTCOM data, Japanese systems are reportedly being trained on signature profiles of Chinese J-16 and JH-7 aircraft and North Korean missile launches. Networks now link Japanese F-35 squadrons with radar, signal, and decision feeds from US and Australian assets. In practical terms, it means Japan can act faster and more decisively based on a shared consensus architecture. In addition, Japan has granted broader operational latitude to US unmanned systems in its waters. This includes full operational rights for American drones to survey Japanese territorial seas. In some instances, Japanese forces are authorized to engage Chinese unmanned aerial vehicles on the basis of US intelligence or warnings. That represents a landmark shift in post-war Japanese defense posture, moving from purely reactive to conditionally offensive under Allied coordination. And the railgun and missile work is only one part of this architecture. They are complemented by electronic warfare and cyber integration. Japan is reportedly installing electromagnetic suppression modules on its destroyers that are aligned with US electronic warfare capabilities, allowing coordinated jamming of Chinese radar in the East China Sea. Combined with railgun test firing, HVGP validation, and shared interceptions, Japan is constructing a layered defensive web that stretches from hardware through data to decision logic. Taken together, Japan's active deployment of hypersonic missiles, railgun prototypes, integrated radar, unmanned systems, and electronic warfare assets demonstrates a deliberate rise toward technological leadership within the Trilateral Alliance. Japan is no longer merely hosting Allied platforms. It is co-developing cutting-edge weapons, sharing command nodes, and operating as a central hub. Within this alliance, Japan contributes critical capabilities, not simply relying on the US umbrella, but emerging as a high-tech partner. That transformation places pressure on regional adversaries. China, Russia, and North Korea must now prepare not only for Japanese weapons, but for systems that dynamically coordinate across capitals. This is a different order of deterrence. Systems that detect, decide, and potentially respond in an integrated, near-automated manner across Tokyo, Canberra, Pearl Harbor, and Guam. In Part 3, we will explore how that alliance architecture is reshaping regional geoeconomics, perceptions, and long-term strategic balance. Japan's strategic shift in the Indo-Pacific has moved beyond military posturing and into the realm of geoeconomics and silent deterrence. Japan's defense architecture is now having ripple effects on regional procurement budgets, technology partnerships, diplomatic weight, and how states perceive the balance of power. While the weapons are real, the fear they generate is often invisible, and that is precisely the point. In ASEAN capitals, Tokyo's security outreach is no longer framed as military expansion, but rather as careful investment in regional stability. Japan's 2022 National Defense Strategy loosened arms export rules and redefined the acquisition model from simple procurement to shared algorithmic systems and cyber technology exports. It increasingly positions itself as a trusted defender and technology partner for Southeast Asia, rather than a militarized presence. A number of concrete initiatives demonstrate this shift. Japan's official security assistance program now provides non-lethal aid and capacity-building support to ASEAN states, including radar systems deployed in the Philippines. Indeed, Japan has relaxed its export policies to enable defensive sensor systems and even submarine and aircraft potential deals with Indonesia, while conducting regular joint training in maritime surveillance, anti-piracy, and disaster response. These efforts are overseen through institutional dialogues, such as the Japan-ASEAN Comprehensive Security Dialogue and ADMM Plus platforms, helping socialize ASEAN military establishments into a norms-based, rules-oriented architecture. In the case of the Philippines, Tokyo plans to transfer 6 retired Abukuma-class destroyer escorts, equipped with anti-ship and anti-submarine capabilities. Experts say that this move helps fill a capability gap in Manila's Navy and deepens military ties under a reciprocal access agreement. That deal also includes radar aid and expanded joint exercises between the two countries. Australia is also deepening its military-industrial ties with Japan. A Japanese Megami-class stealth frigate made a stop in Darwin in June 2025 as part of Japan's bid for Australia's C-3000 frigate program. Mitsubishi Heavy Industries is the leader, aiming to supply vessels equipped with advanced anti-submarine and anti-mine warfare systems, even though it is typically more costly than its German competitor. The visit underscored Japan's ambitions to expand its defense industry footprint and deepen cooperation with partner states. At the same time, trilateral coordination between Japan, Australia, and the United States has become more institutionalized. A reciprocal access agreement between Japan and Australia entered into force, enabling joint exercises, disaster relief operations, and other cooperative activities with significantly fewer procedural barriers. This is part of a broader special strategic partnership under their bilateral joint declaration on security cooperation, supporting coordination in operations and command arrangements. Recently, the defense ministers of Australia, Japan, the United States, and the Philippines reaffirmed their operational integration. At the May 2025 meeting in Singapore, representatives reaffirmed shared concern over destabilizing actions in the East and South China Seas. They endorsed expanded information sharing via radar installations, command fusion centers, and intergovernmental security agreements to build a common operating picture across the region, especially around the Philippines' air domain awareness infrastructure. Meanwhile, Japan is not limiting its technological influence to hardware. Through trilateral frameworks like the Defense Industrial Cooperation, Acquisition and Sustainment Forum, Tokyo and Canberra are collaborating with the United States to co-produce weapons, sensors, and components. The aim is to build interoperable industrial bases that can jointly supply mid- and long-range strike systems, not only for their own military forces, but potentially for export to third countries. This turning of dark data into strategic power reflects Japan's reimagined approach to deterrence, not measured in warships alone, but through software, algorithms, and supply lines. Japan's surveillance-grade radar systems, cyber intelligence platforms, and early warning protocols are now export commodities. Startups and defense tech firms in Japan and allied countries have initiated API-based licensing for hypersonic counter-algorithms, targeting markets across Southeast Asia and beyond. One significant manifestation of this influence is the Global Combat Air Program, GCAP, a trilateral fighter jet initiative led by Japan, the UK, and Italy. Signed into the treaty in December 2023, Japan contributes industrial capacity and R&D leadership, with the first demonstrators expected in 2027 and service entry by mid-2030s. The program reinforces Japan's growing role in co-developing next-generation aerospace platforms alongside other leading democracies. In ASEAN capitals, Japan's security roadmap is increasingly interpreted not as a threat, but as a stabilizing force. Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand are designing protocols to procure Japanese defense systems, especially radars and surveillance tools. Vietnam and the Philippines have expressed interest in Japanese hypersonic defense or missile tracking technologies. As a result, deterrence is no longer viewed as confrontation with expensive assets, but a network of shared awareness and response capability across allied capitals. Tokyo's rise as a platform provider also reshapes regional perceptions of risk. China's ability to conduct unmonitored naval operations is constrained. Russian flights around the Kuril Islands are now detected by electro-optical sensors and relayed instantly to U.S. command centers, altering Russia's maritime posture in the northern Pacific and contributing to internal debates within the Kremlin over deployment costs and risk. North Korea, too, appears increasingly cautious. Planned April 2025 missile tests were postponed during a period when Japan conducted railgun testing on the JS Asuka. Even in the absence of an immediate threat, Pyongyang adjusted its schedule, revealing the psychological efficacy of perceived capability. Japan's new rules of engagement, which permit automatic launch triggers based on Allied radar detection, have reduced North Korea's capacity for intimidation through surprise launches. Japan's transformation reflects a broader shift in Japanese identity, from pacifist restraint toward strategic architecture. Its post-war self-defense doctrine has been recalibrated into a model embracing deterrence balanced with transparency, cyber cooperation, and trust-based regional security. Declared security partnerships emphasize inclusive multilateralism rather than exclusive bloc formation. In economic terms, Japan's defense strategy is morphing into a geo-economic advantage. Japanese companies such as NEC, Mitsubishi, Toshiba, and emerging startups now export cyber defense platforms, satellite-based surveillance packages, AI-powered radar analytics, and algorithmic targeting systems. Embedded technology standards, like HVGP-compliant integration systems, have become quality labels in regional defense procurement. Exports are structured not merely as hardware sales, but as long-term service and training contracts, reinforcing Japan's role in regional capacity building. In the Philippines, radar systems are accompanied by long-term maintenance agreements and training packages. In other cases, partner governments are offered subscriptions to Japanese satellite ground data networks tied into Allied ISR nodes. Japan's strategy places deterrence at the intersection of technology, alliance, and persuasion. The presence of hypersonic weapons or railguns becomes less vital than the shared data backends, Link 16 nodes, and cyber domains connecting island chains from Hawaii to Canberra. Increasingly, potential adversaries must anticipate decisions not just from Tokyo, but from coordinated systems across multiple capitals. That is the model of silent deterrence: influence without firing, pressure without confrontation. For regional powers, China, Russia, and North Korea, the uncertainty and speed of response matter more than the actual deployment of missiles. Japan's ability to shape adversary behavior lies in the expectation that action will not catch it off guard. In this final act of strategic redesign, Tokyo and its allies have moved deterrence into the realm of collective cognition. The next era of Indo-Pacific stability will be defined by who controls the data, how algorithms filter signals, and which capitals are joined through shared targeting and decision networks, even before weapons are fired.